demand.
Right.
1 second. Okay, so first of all, what is price elasticity of demand?
Price elasticity of demand is when um is the um is the what leniency? I don't know what to say that uh you can have in order to make the customer pay the taxes instead of you. I don't know. Uh, it's opposite of elastic. So it's not necessary the market.
1 second, I haven't
I don't know.
started sharing my screen with you, right?
No. Okay, I don't know. I'm speaking nonsense.
Um,
Wait. Let me think. Elasticity of demand is when the demand of a certain product is not um, necessary. I don't know how to explain it.
Measure of responsiveness, quantity demanded of a product
Why? Okay.
to a change in its price.
Price elasticity of demand, measure of.
By how much does the quantity demand change for a given change in price? So we calculate PED is equal to percentage change in price. If
Uh,
price
uh,
changes by a certain percentage, by what percentage does the quantity demanded change?
okay.
Okay, so if you have got this down, then the next thing is that PED, it could give me a few values. So for
Right.
example, one extreme is when the value of, let me write over here, values of PED. So on one extreme, value of PED is 0. When would I get an answer 0 for this PED? When percentage change in quantity demanded is 0.
When percentage change.
0
Okay.
divided by anything would be 0, right?
0 divided by anything will be 0. Yes.
Okay, so when it means that percentage change in quantity demanded is 0. So let me write that over here. Percentage change in quantity demanded is 0, no matter how much the price changes by. If percentage change in quantity demanded is 0, this is case of perfectly inelastic demand.
Change in quantity. Quantity of what?
Of the product we are talking about, quantity demanded of the product. So
Demand. Okay.
if we're talking about beef, and if the price changes and the quantity demanded does not change at all
Uh-huh.
following the change in price, then the demand for beef would be called perfectly inelastic. So in
Okay.
your case, the ambulances example that you give, if there is change in price to get the ambulance, yet the quantity demanded of the ambulance does not change, it's fixed, there is zero change in that, then
Uh-huh.
uh, we will have perfectly inelastic demand. By the way, one more thing,
So
hopefully,
inelastic demand is good for the producers and the suppliers.
good, we'll look at good bad in a bit. Let's just focus on the values now. It's good for supplier, you're right, because they can change the price, they can increase the price and keep increasing the revenues.
Right.
One
Right.
more thing I'd like you to note down, in fact you must already know about it, that percent quantity demand,
What did you say? Percentage in?
percentage change in quantity demanded. Can you see the screen?
Yeah. Percentage change in quantity demanded.
So later quantity minus initial quantity divided by initial quantity Q1 into 100, that would be percentage change in quantity demanded.
Uh-huh.
And percentage change in price would be equal to 100.
Indeed.
Okay, so now we are saying that percentage change in quantity demanded is zero. That would be called case of perfectly inelastic demand. Then
Uh-huh.
there could be when the value of PED is less than 1. So when will I have PED less than 1? It would be when percentage change in QD
Uh-huh.
is less than percentage change in price. So when denominator is greater than numerator, the answer will be less than 1. When percentage change in price is more and percentage change in QD is less, the answer would be less than 1, right?
Right.
So it means that yes, the price of the product is increasing or decreasing, but the quantity demanded is not changing as much as the change in price.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so this would be the case of inelastic demand.
Okay.
It's not perfectly inelastic, but still it's inelastic. The demand is not changing as much as the change in price.
Okay.
Okay.
Percentage, you mean, right?
Percentage. All right. Another thing, by the way, you must have noticed that we're talking about percentage. The thing is that it won't be a like to like comparison. To make it a like to like comparison, we have to compare it in percentages.
Right.
So once the values are in percentages, we can compare percentage to percentage. But we can't compare, for example, change in dollars to change in kgs or change in number of units sold of something.
Right.
Okay. PED over here. Okay. So PED, we have talked about zero. We have talked about less than one. That change in price, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is called unitary elastic demand.
Both are equal.
Both are equal.
Unitary elastic. Okay.
Since the answer is one. Then there could
Okay.
be another case where PED is more than 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this would percent the quantity demanded, it falls by 7%. The change in quantity demanded would be more than the change in price.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this would be the case of uh, elastic demand.
Mm-hmm.
The demand is elastic as it is responding to proportionately more than the change in price. And last is the case of perfectly elastic demand. Perfectly elastic demand is when
It's -1 or something. I don't know.
mhm, perfectly elastic demand will get infinity as answer when denominator is 0.
But
So anything divided by 0. So for it means that all the quantity demanded is at a certain price. If there is a slight bit of change in all the quantity demanded is at a certain price, if there is even a minute change in price as small as 0.000001%,
right.
something almost equal to 0%, the quantity demanded
Right.
does not exist.
Exist. Okay.
Okay, there would be no demand at all if the price it rises just by a very tiny bit.
Right.
So that would be the case of perfectly elastic demand.
Right.
Another thing which you what would be the answer for PED? Would we get positive answer in some cases, negative answer in some cases? Would we have always positive answer or always negative answer for PED?
Uh, I mean, it should be positive, right? Because it's percentage.
PED will always be negative. Why?
Uh, because the quantity demanded is always less, more than the Less than.
Less or more would determine the answer being greater than 1 or less than 1 or equal to 1.
The denominator is bigger. That's what I don't know.
Never.
Denominator is negative.
If price changes upwards, price and quantity demanded are inversely proportional. So if
Okay.
one has a positive change, the other would have a negative change.
Okay.
So the answer will always be negative. So if price, there is positive change in price, there would be negative change in quantity demanded. And if there is negative change in price, there would be positive change in quantity demanded. So the answer would always be negative.
Hmm.
Did you get this thing?
No.
Okay. So for example, the price of something, it rises by 5%. Would its quantity demanded rise or fall?
Fall.
So it would be minus X%, whatever, but it would be minus.
So if it's
And
positive
and if the
quantity,
if price drops negative 5%, there would be positive change in quantity demanded.
okay, I got it.
Got it?
Yeah.
Okay. So we need to know four things about. We'll study the income elasticity of demand in a bit as well. We need to know the definition. We need to know
Wait,
the
I
form.
need to remember all of these.
Would be good if you could, because it would be helpful later on. Just note
Okay,
them down
so
somewhere.
remember,
Hmm.
I don't have anything to know. I think I can remember. Perfectly inelastic demand. Perfectly inelastic demand. Inelastic demand. Unitary elastic demand. Elastic demand, and then perfectly elastic demand.
Hmm. You'll need to note it somewhere. You'll need to note it somewhere. Uh, can you take screenshots?
Yes.
Take screenshot of this slide, and then I'll go to the other slide. Take screenshot of that slide as well.
Do you know how to do it? I know I can. Wait. Uh,
You have the Windows system on.
no. MacBook. I used to do it. I forgot how.
Is there a print screen button?
No.
There
It
is a
was
command something.
command. Yeah. Command Shift 3. I think. Let me see. Command Shift 3. Okay, no, it's not that. Yeah, it was. I got it.
Okay, this one and this one as well, please.
Okay. Command Shift. Wait 1 second. It's not going off my screen now. Okay, Command Shift 3. Done.
All right, all right, all right. Okay, let me in fact keep it here and go to slide 3. What else have I got? There is an example. Shall we solve it? Shall we solve it?
Uh-huh.
Shall we solve it?
Uh-huh.
Do you have your book with you?
Nah. Yeah, actually, maybe 1 second. Yeah.
On page 54 of PDF, which is page 46 of the book.
Page 54. 54. 1 second. It's opening. It only takes years. Don't worry.
Hmm.
54. Okay. 46 of the textbook?
Hmm.
Yes, I see it.
There is this graph towards the right hand side. There are
Yeah,
two demand curves, DA and DB.
right.
Can you calculate the price elasticity of demand for this curve DA for the points given?
Okay, sure. So DA for that one, it would appear to have to be, is to have, do you understand? D2. Which is D2? Right one, I take.
DA.
Okay, so D 10, 120. Wait, what is D and B in this?
We are just talking about DA for now.
Okay, so the price over here is 6 and 6. Right? Right? It's 6 minus 6 divided by 6. Is that it?
Mhm. So see, I'll do it for DA. For DB, I'll ask you to do it. Look over here. So for DA, it gives me 2 points. One at price 10. The quantity
Uh-huh.
demanded is how much?
120. Price
Quantity
100.
demanded is 100. P2 is how much? P2 is 6 and Q2 is 120.
Now what?
So PED is percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price. So for quantity demanded, Q2 minus Q1 over Q1. So 120 minus 100 over 100.
Sure, but I don't get it.
At this
Why these
price,
two lines?
okay, let me show you. Let me tell you.
I understand like from the
Hmm,
graph, but why
hmm,
are there two
hmm.
lines is my question.
These are two different graphs. You're asking about why there is DA and why there is DB. Is that your question?
Uh-huh. No, why is there 10 and why is there 6? What are these two?
For a demand curve, we know that as price changes, quantity demanded changes. So,
Uh-huh.
keeping other things constant for a given amount of time, the price of something, if it decreases, the quantity demanded increases. And if
Uh-huh.
price increases, the quantity demanded decreases. So, it's just showing 2 points for one market
So two
for this
random
product.
points.
Uh, Two different price levels for product A and
Okay.
giving how much would the quantity demanded at these two
So
price
now
levels.
I'll have to find the PED for this one line.
For this one product
Right. And
DA.
then okay. Then I can do it for DB.
Hmm. So let me
Then
first
what?
do it for DA and then
Okay,
you
so
can
let
do it.
me tell you. 6 minus 10 divided by 10. So it's minus 4 divided by 10, which is minus 2 by 5. That divided by,
This would
yeah,
be in denominator. Percentage change in price is in denominator. So 6 minus 10 over 10 into 100.
okay, yeah,
And over here I'll have 120. Remember this, there is this multiplication with 100 in numerator and multiplication with 100 in denominator, so we can ignore these hundreds.
uh-huh,
Will make your calculation simpler. Okay,
okay,
so I'll just remove these. So
okay.
that leaves me with 0.2. 6 minus 10 is minus 4. Minus 4 by 10 is minus zero point 0.4.
Uh-huh,
Okay, so it will be minus 1 by 2, which is equal to minus 0.5.
mm-hmm.
So I know the answer is always negative for PED. I can ignore that and I can tell that the demand of this product is inelastic since it's less than 1.
Okay.
Okay, makes sense.
Inelastic, because it's less than 1.
And I could have,
Okay.
I mean, it appears from the graph as well because the straighter the demand curve, the more inelastic it is, we know.
What? The straighter, okay.
I mean, the more vertical the demand curve.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Okay, another thing we'll learn later on for straight lines, we have got this thing in our mind that the gradient is always the same. The thing is that for the demand curve, the PED at throughout the demand curve, it's not constant. So from
Okay.
price 10 to 6, it's minus 0.5. I could have a different value of PED on the same DA if I choose different price levels. For example, if I choose from 14 to 10, it might be different.
Right.
It might be. Okay. Now you do it for DB.
Mm. Okay. So if I'm doing it for DB, I will have to first pull out a gun and then shoot myself. Uh, First it's 10 by 120, right? I mean, not 10 by 120. I mean, like 10, price is 10 and price is 6 again. So P1 is 10 and P2 is 6. Can you write it down?
In fact, I'm doing it on slide 4.
Can you write it down? Can you just write what I'm telling you? Because I
Okay.
don't have anything to
I
write.
will, I will, I will, I will, I will.
Okay.
Shall I erase this one?
I can't see what you just wrote, by the way.
I haven't
I'm
written anything.
looking
I'm
for
just asking you, shall I erase this slide?
the old slide. No, no, just keep it.
Okay.
Uh,
I'll do it over here.
okay. Uh, P1 is P1 is 10,
P1 is 10.
P2 is 6.
P2 is 6.
Okay. And then Q1 is 1. Q1 is 100. Which one was 10? P1 or P2 was 10?
P1 is 10. So price, quantity demanded at
100.
10, price is 100.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then quantity demanded at price 6 is 200. So Q2 is 200. And so then what you have to do is first Q. So 200 minus 100 divided by 100. So it's 100 by 100, which is 1, correct?
Hmm.
So 1 that is divided by P2, which is 600. No, which is 6. No, which is 10. So 10
P2 is 6
P2 is 6. So 6 minus 10 divided by 6.
divided by 10.
So we are by 10. So minus 2 by 5. And so 5 minus 5 by 2. Minus 5 by 2 is less than 1. So it is inelastic.
Minus 5 by 2 is, I mean, we'll have to ignore the sign. Minus 5 by 2 is 2 minus 2.5, right?
Minus 2.5, yeah.
So PED is always
Then
negative.
it's,
We isolate the negative sign,
oh yes.
and the absolute terms, this is more than
It's more
1.
than 1, so it's inelastic.
It's elastic. It's elastic. More than 1 is elastic. A
Yes.
few more
Okay.
points about the same graph. See, it is giving for the same two values. The value change is same for the two products, DA and DB. So it's 10 to 6. So whatever
Uh-huh.
the percentage change we calculated for the first one, it was the same, 6 minus 2 by 6 minus 10 by 10, which is 40%. Okay.
Right.
The other thing to note about this thing is that for the same price change and for the same initial quantity demand of the two product, the price for both products, it fell from 10 to 6. Quantity demanded of one just increased by 20, and quantity demand of the other, it increased to 200. It increased by 100. So
Yes.
price change for both products is same, yet quantity demanded change for both products is different. So
Yes.
this shows me that the elasticity of demand for the two product is different. For the two products is different. Now the question comes: why is there a difference in PED of different products? Or and after that we'll discuss: can I make the PED of a product different? For example, if there is a certain PD for a certain product, can I change that? So
Yes.
so first let's talk about what factors affect the PED of a product, or the factors that influence PED.
If the product is a necessity, or if it's what do you say? If it's a luxury product or whatever, something like
Okay, so the first thing that you said is necessity, whether the product is necessity or not. How would that determine the PED?
because if it's a necessity, then it is more inelastic.
So the more
It's
necessary the product is, the more inelastic its demand would be. What else?
uh, other thing would be uh, what is the question?
What are the factors that influence PED of a product? Factors that would determine whether the PED of the product is high or low.
External shocks.
Wow. What external shocks?
Government rules, or weather,
Government saying
or
whether a product is necessity or not.
yes, yes.
Sir, one
Bans. I mean, like bans
a
of
similar
taxes.
a similar to that of necessity is necessity we usually write as alternative. But if there are no alternatives available, then the demand would be inelastic.
Okay, okay.
Okay. The next thing is that alternatives are available or substitutes are available, but what about the attractiveness of substitutes?
Okay.
This thing also, power of branding. So how strong
Mhm.
the branding power is available? For example, other laptop manufacturers, even though they make laptops for you, the brand power of Apple is so strong that you don't even consider them substitutes or alternatives. So
Right,
the more strong, the stronger the branding power, the higher the inelasticity of demand,
right, right,
or PED would be low.
right.
Okay. The third thing is the third thing is proportion of income spent on a product.
Mhm.
How would that?
But mixed with the price of the
So
thing
it's
so
saying
that
that
you can
what
afford it.
percentage of my income gets spent on the product? 5%, 10%, 20%. How would this, for example, on something 5% is spent, and for something 40% is spent? For example,
Mm-hmm.
40% of my income it gets spent on the rent, and
Right,
just
right.
3% of my income it gets spent on the staple food.
Yes, yes. You live in a mansion and eat very little. Okay, I see.
Okay, so
Okay.
how would now which would have a more elastic demand? So the higher the proportion of income that gets spent on a product, the more elastic its demand is. Because
Higher the proportion.
hmm,
Okay.
because
Can you
see,
repeat?
okay, on something I'm spending 5%, on product A I'm spending 5% of my income, and on product B I'm spending 40% of my income.
Uh-huh.
Okay, if there is just a 5% increase
Increase.
in the price of this
Okay.
product,
Uh-huh.
it would matter a lot. But if there is
Yeah.
same 5% increase in the price of this product, it won't matter that much,
Really?
because already a low percentage of my income is getting spent on that,
I guess. Okay.
so it won't affect me that much.
I
So
guess.
for
So.
example, if let's say 40 I eat chewing gum, for example, a very little 0.1% of my monthly budget gets spent on chewing gum. If there is 100% increase in the price of the chewing gum, so it would increase to 0.2%. Most likely my demand for chewing gums won't change. But if this rent it goes up by 100%, it means that 80% of now gets spent on this. The demand for this product would definitely change.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
All right.
Mm.
Um. Okay. Okay. This. Then any other factor which you think can affect the? Did you get this factor? Understand this factor?
Yes.
Okay. Any other factor that you can think can affect the PED of a product?
Uh, what is PED?
Price elasticity of demand.
Uh, no.
Hmm.
Politics. Pestle.
Hmm. Sir, another factor which affects PED is time.
Okay. Okay.
In short run, the demand is inelastic. In long run, the demand is elastic.
Meaning?
So in short run, you have less time to consider the substitutes. If price of something rises, you usually do not have a lot of time to react to it. You have to make the decision, so you have to just bear with the change in price. However, if
Right.
in the long run the price of something changes, you have time to consider other substitutes.
Right.
This thing
Right.
is also visible. For example, the last minute tickets that you get for any flight, or the closer you
Uh-huh.
get tickets to any flight, the rates are higher because the flight operators they know that if this person is coming at this last moment, chances are that
They
he
have
has
another option.
hmm, he has to fly at this moment,
Right.
so they'll charge you a higher price. But if in the long run they charge higher prices, you can always consider other options available.
Right.
Okay, so these are four main factors. Other factors which are maybe mentioned in the book are just around these. So the last thing that needs to be considered in this price elasticity thing is that shall I let it stay? I'll let all of these. You're still at your grandfather's, right?
Right.
Would you be back anytime this week or
Tomorrow.
tomorrow? I'll just let it stay over here for some time so maybe you can get home and note this down if you wish to.
Right.
Okay, next thing is how does this knowledge of PED help producers, especially with regards to pricing decision?
Uh-huh.
Any idea?
So if it's highly inelastic, then they can increase the price of the product without hesitating. But if they want to increase the price and it's elastic,
Why would they
it's
want
going
to
to
increase
cost
the
it more
price of the product?
to gain more revenue, more profit.
So, for example, can a producer whose the demand of the product which he sells is elastic, how can he earn more revenue then? Does he have any chance of earning more revenue?
Can I repeat?
Okay, first of all, we say that total revenue is equal to price into quantity. Agreed?
Uh-huh.
Now we have got two cases. There are two producers. One, he sells a product which whose demand is elastic. So product with elastic more revenues. How can they do that?
Reduce costs.
Do what?
Reduce costs.
Reduce cost. Revenue won't change. Profits would change, but revenue won't. Right now they want to earn more revenue, not earn more profit. Reducing cost would just increase
Okay.
their profit.
Elastic demand Reduce the price and for inelastic increase the price.
Very good, very good. Let's see how it works. So this person, he says revenue is equal to price into quantity. Let's try increasing the price to increase the revenue. But when he increases the price, the quantity demanded falls by more than proportionately. As a result, his
Mm.
revenues would decline. Then the quantity demanded would increase by a lot and the revenues would increase. If he reduces price
Mm.
by 5%, the quantity demanded would rise by more than 5%.
Mm.
So his revenues could increase.
Uh-huh.
Okay, for this other person, he says that this producer with elastic demand, he increased his revenues by lowering the price. Let me try the same. So he lowers the price by a lot. Quantity demanded increases by just a little, since the demand is
Uh-huh.
inelastic. So his revenues would decline.
Right.
So he then tries the other approach where he increases the price by a lot. The quantity demanded won't fall by as much. As a result, his revenues would increase.
Right.
So this is how both of them could increase the revenues, but this is just something that we are doing mathematically. It could be that they have to consider what's the impact of high prices on consumer perception or low prices on consumer perception. We are just as of while making this particular assessment, we are keeping other things constant. What if
Right.
the first person, he lowers the price, but that communicates a the message of cheaper quality to the consumers?
Uh-huh.
They might thus not increase the quantity demanded. Similarly, for a
Right.
person who tries to increase the price too much, maybe looks exploitative, so consumers may switch to other products even though they previously did not consider them of as good substitutes. I mean,
Right.
just for the sake of this analysis, we are keeping other things constant, which a
Uh,
business would have to take care of in real life. One more thing, we have very easily said that this much price change and this much quantity demanded change. In real life, producers, they have a rough idea of whether the PED is elastic or inelastic. It's in the elastic range or inelastic, but the precise value is unknown.
mm-hmm.
For many producers, they do not have very precise data that if there is this much change in price, or in this particular region of price, if it changes by this much, how much the quantity demanded would change by. Either they have to do a lot of trial and error,
Mm.
or it would be that they just have a rough idea. They don't have the precise values that this much change in price would cause this much change in quantity demanded.
Mm-hmm.
So in theory it makes a lot of sense, but in practice it's a bit difficult to use.
Right.
And obviously, in practice, we know that there are other variables besides price which affect the quantity demanded of a product. So it's really difficult to isolate just the effect of price and to manage the revenues simply by a change in price. To a large extent, I mean, to some extent, you can, but obviously, there are other factors involved which are not incorporated in this assessment of PED. Okay, this was
Like.
just like for example incomes of people. If you for example decrease the price of a good and you expect that the quantity demanded would increase, but when the by the time during the time you decreased the price, somehow the global recession or the local economy, it went into recession, so the purchasing power of people, it declines in recession.
Mm. Mm.
So even with you lowering the price, the quantity demanded does not increase by as much, or it might even decrease. Make sense?
Kind of.
So the thing is that for all these economic variables that we study, we use this term ceteris paribus, that keeping other things constant. So while I'm doing the analysis of just to understand the impact of price and elasticity and revenue, I have to consider that economy is not changing, no new products are being launched, there are no changes in prices of substitutes and all other things.
So what's the thing called strategicity?
Sorry again.
It's called straticity. What?
Ceteris paribus. Ceteris. I think it's Latin.
That
Ceteris paribus.
Ceteris paribus.
Hmm.
Ceteris paribus. Okay.
So, for example, in physics, we used to have the way we had in an isolated system, or we assumed no friction, no air resistance, just as to know the effect of a particular force. We assume other things to be constant. Whereas in real life, when that phenomena is happening, there is air resistance, there is friction.
Mm-hmm.
But simply to understand solely the impact of a particular force, at times we have to assume other things to be constant.
Right.
So the same thing is being applied over here. Okay,
Right.
so if you have understood this concept of price elasticity of demand, there are other types of elasticities of demand. So the next one that we have, the next chapter is uh, income elasticity of demand.
Uh-huh.
So
Can you
in
just recap what you did in this chapter so we
sure,
can
sure,
start
sure,
that
sure,
next?
sure, sure, sure. So we talked about price elasticity of demand,
Right.
and for this concept, we said that we need to know four things. Those four
Uh-huh.
things are um, definition, and then interpretation of magnitude.
Right.
Okay, so for the definition, we said that price elasticity of demand is measure of responsiveness of quantity demanded of a product following a change in price. If price of the product changes, by how much would the quantity demanded change?
Mm-hmm.
So the quantity demanded, it responds to change in price. And when I measure that responsiveness by how much it responds, that measure is called price elasticity of demand.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the formula that I used for PED was PED is equal to percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said percentage change in quantity demanded is calculated by Q2 minus Q1 over Q1 into 100, and percentage
Mm-hmm.
change in price is calculated by P2 minus P1 over P1 into 100.
Right.
Later
Okay.
minus initial over initial into 100. Then for the sake of ease, to make calculations easier, I told you that this 100, it's being multiplied in the numerator as well as the denominator, so we can simply cancel it out.
Right.
All right, so we've got two things covered: definition and formula. The interpretation of sign, I told you that PED, it will always have a negative sign.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it negative? uh, by the way, there is a fifth thing as well, which is use of this value of PED, or the yes, the value of PED that they get. Okay, so for the interpretation of sign, I told you that PED, it is always negative. The
So the
reason,
definition again, can you just keep naming it in my head because it doesn't go in.
okay, so definition, it has got two components. The first
Uh-huh.
thing that I need to understand is that quantity demanded responds to a change in price.
Okay.
So measuring how much it responds to, or measure of responsiveness
Okay.
of quantity demanded to the change in price, is the PED
Measure of responsiveness.
of quantity
Okay.
demanded.
Measure of responsiveness of quantity demanded with respect to change in price.
Hmm, to the change in price.
To the change in price. Okay. Okay. It's the responsiveness of quantity demand, not quantity demand.
Measure of responsiveness of quantity demanded to the change
Yeah.
in price.
Yeah. Okay. 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 Okay.
To make it simple, I'll just put this away of a product. We're talking about just one product. So measure of responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in price of the product is PED.
Right. Okay. I got it.
Okay, and we calculate it by percentage change in QED over percentage change in price. PED is always negative, so we can
Uh-huh.
ignore the negative sign and focus on the absolute value. This is what we will do in all the elasticities that we study. We'll isolate the sign from the magnitude. We'll interpret
Right.
the sign separately and interpret the magnitude separately in absolute terms. So sign of PED, I told you, it's always negative, and it is negative because price and quantity demanded, they are inversely proportional to each other. If there is a positive change in price, there would be a negative change in quantity demanded. And if there is a negative change in price, there would be a positive change in quantity demanded. So I'll have negative sign either in the numerator or the denominator. So my answer will always be negative.
Right. Yeah, okay, got
So the next is interpretation of magnitude. So we said that PED, it could have a range of values. So PED, it could have a value of 0. So when will I have value of 0? I'll have the value of 0 when percentage change in quantity demanded, or the numerator, it is price. No matter by how much the price changes, the quantity demanded is stuck somewhere, and it's just that. That is perfectly inelastic demand.
Okay, but that's not realistic, right?
We have close enough examples, but not a perfect example. And for close enough examples, we said it was of life-saving drugs.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Um. Okay. So the next thing is that if not zero, PED, it could at least have a value of less than one. So when would PED, it would have a value of less than one? It would is less than one.
Uh-huh.
Mathematically, it's that to understand it, it means that whatever the change in price, quantity proportionate change in quantity demanded is less. So if price,
Uh-huh.
for example, is increasing by 5% or 3% or 2% or half percent, whatever
Okay.
that change in quantity demanded is, it is less than the percentage change in price.
Uh-huh.
So that would give me inelastic demand, and intuitively it's also inelastic because there is change in price and quantity demanded is not changing as much, so it is inelastic.
Okay. So it's not, the gradient is not less than half. Okay.
I don't think of it as gradient because I told you in economics we get into that sort of problems. I don't know in how much depth we'll have to go into business. We'll see in the past papers. But in economics, we see that the PED throughout a demand curve, it's not the same.
Okay.
Even though it appears to be a straight line, it's not the same
Okay.
throughout because it's not. We are taking percentage change. We're not. Had we been doing just the change, then it would have been the gradient,
Right. Okay.
even though it would have been 1 over gradient because percentage change QD is on the x-axis. Anyhow,
Right.
anyhow, um, this then there is this next case of PED being equal to 1. So when PED is equal to 1, when the proportionate change in quantity demanded is equal to the percentage change in price. So whatever percentage price changes by, the quantity demanded would change by the same percentage.
Right.
By the way, another thing we noticed over here, we discussed the case of inelastic and elastic demand, that how could a business, it could change its revenue. If it were the case of unitary elastic demand, he it's likely that he won't be able to increase or decrease his revenue by changing price, because whatever percentage he increases his price by, the quantity demanded would decrease by the same percentage.
Right. So he's just stuck there.
Hmm. But when we put in the actual values, the result, I mean, it's more likely the case. There could be a very, I mean, example, if you put in the actual figures, we are talking about percentage changes, right? There
Right.
is
Right.
5% increase in price and 5% decrease in quantity demanded. So the absolute values, when we actually put in the values, the result could be different. This is just a holistic picture.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so coming back to our range of PED that we were discussing, let me eliminate this slide. Um, Please eliminate, delete. Good. Okay, so PED is one is when the percentage change in quantity demand is equal to percentage change in price, and then we get to the case of elastic demand. So elastic demand is when whatever the change in price, the quantity demanded changes by more than that.
Uh-huh.
So the demand is elastic. There was certain change in price, but it resulted in even a greater change in quantity demanded percentage.
Right.
So that would
Right.
give me elastic demand, and the value of PED in this case would be more than 1. We are talking about absolute value. We are ignoring the sign because all these values are in the negative realm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the last one we had was perfectly elastic demand. So perfectly elastic demand would be that users, for example, they do not accept even a very small change in price, as small as almost equal to zero. If there is a price change even as small as almost equal to zero, they would change the quantity demanded, or the quantity demanded won't exist. So that is perfectly elastic demand. Which
Right.
products would have perfectly elastic demand or perfectly inelastic demand? That depends from on these factors. So if there are
Right.
a lot of alternatives available, the demand would be highly elastic. There is, like, the substitutes are attractive enough, there is very weak brand power, the demand would be more elastic.
Uh-huh.
If there is, for example, a high proportion of income spent on the product, the demand is elastic. So this gives me that the demand for luxury products is elastic.
Right. Right.
Okay. Then there is time. If I've got the short run, in the short run the demand is relatively inelastic. In long run the demand is relatively elastic.
Yeah.
Okay, then the last thing that we discussed, by the way, this uh, elastic and inelastic, this PED less than 1, not perfectly inelastic, and PED greater than 1. So for example, in here I can maybe put the necessities. For example, my electricity bill, even if the price of electricity goes up, my consumption for electricity might not fall by a lot,
Uh-huh.
because maybe I'm already using the bare minimum. So I'll
Yeah.
try to reduce the amount that I consume, but still there is some that I have to consume no matter what. So maybe that falls in this inelastic demand. And this, for example, PED of more than 1, it could be maybe the excursion trips that I have. If I've got, for example, any foreign trips that I make, or if I, for example, spend on luxury food or luxury items, luxury spending, they usually fall in this PED of more than 1.
Uh-huh.
Okay, okay. Then the last thing that we discussed was that how consumers, they can use this concept of PED to increase or decrease their revenues, and eventually we concluded that for elastic demand, the better strategy is to reduce the prices, which would help the quantity demanded increase by more than that, and the revenue would increase. And for the inelastic, you can simply increase the prices, the quantity demanded won't fall by that much, and the revenues would increase.
Right.
We
Yeah.
ended that with a few caveats that, for example, number one, there are other factors involved in real life. It's not just price to quantity demanded. For example, the economic condition, the supply of the product, for example, substitutes, availability of substitutes, price of substitutes. So for now we are assuming all those to be constant, but while a producer is making the decision in real life, all those factors would come into play. The second caveat that we mentioned was
Mm-hmm.
that uh, the producers or the sellers, they have got a rough idea of whether the demand for the product, it lies in the elastic or inelastic region, but it's rare that they have a very precise value of PED for different price ranges.
Right.
All right, so that limits the use of PED. Let's keep it till here for now. We'll do the YED in the next class. We'll be using the same thing. We'll be just tweaking a few things. So I'll let these slides stay over here and do the math stuff from